obscure world of parking. We use it every day, but have we really capitalized on the intricacies of our industry? In this podcast, the Parking Network will go behind the scenes and talk to industry professionals about all things parking, from the horizon of evolving technology and even stories of the old days. We hope to encourage and inspire operators and property managers alike to look at parking through a new lens.
Hello, and welcome to the Our Parking Industry Podcast. On today's episode, Clyde Wilson and Bob Harkins discuss university parking. In 2018, Bob retired from the University of Texas, where he served as the Associate Vice President for Campus Safety and Security for 13 years. During this episode, Clyde and Bob discuss the challenges surrounding managing parking, safety, and security on a college campus. We want to let our audience know that in this episode, we delve into some deeply sensitive topics that are often overlooked but crucial to address when discussing parking at universities. We navigated this conversation with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to fostering meaningful dialogue about challenges in our industry. We are glad you're here. Let's dive in.
I entered the parking industry in 1993 at the University of Pittsburgh. I became the first director and founded the Department of Parking and Transportation at the University of Pittsburgh. Spent 7 years there, then moved to the University of Texas in Austin, Texas. Was the director of parking and transportation for the University of Texas for 5 years, and then became the associate vice president for campus safety and security for the next 13 years. But parking was always still part of my portfolio. I retired in 2018.
Okay, so you've had a nice long history, and I've known you for a long time as really one of the people that fully understood all the requirements of dealing with parking on a big university campus. So I think the first question that I'd like to ask, just a quick one, what did you see during that time as your single biggest challenge in dealing with parking on such a vast campus as the campuses that you were involved in?
Well, first of all the surface parking lots serve as a space holder for a building. And you have a budget, and the next thing you know, you're losing 1,000 spaces because they're putting a building in, and that 1,000 space revenue is gone. And in no way, at least at the University of Texas at the time, that you got that space back or you got that money back. So it was an economic impact that really kind of was the most impactful on me at UT.
What did you think at the time? Well, let me change the way I asked that. The people that you had to report to above you, what did you understand about their ability to understand what the demands were on you and running a big campus parking department?
I worked for an associate vice president by the name of Joe Powell. Maybe you don't need names, but Joe was kind of supportive of all of the parking initiatives that I offered. His boss was a assistant vice president, and she understood all of the needs and particularly making the campus happy. It was a good relationship. Later on, she retired, and I spent the last couple of years with a different relationship with a different person that didn't appreciate all the difficulties we had gone through.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that's fairly common across a lot of the industry. So the next question then, what were some of the challenges in managing a campus? Your campuses that you were involved in are all very large. So parking is a very large part of the campus and what it takes every day to get everybody to work. What were the biggest challenges with the equipment vendors and being able to keep everything you needed up and running because everybody's coming every day, whether everybody's ready or not?
Well, I would answer that in two ways. One, the biggest challenge at UT, and I'll talk most of the time at UT, we had 50,000 students plus about 25,000 staff and faculty,
Right.
And we had 11,000 parking spaces. So
That's exciting.
You add that together and that doesn't make sense. But what made it work was our relationship with the local transit agency, and we moved a lot of people, left their car at their apartment and took a bus to campus, and then took a bus from campus back to their apartment, thus kept the vehicle off campus. One of my biggest fears was one of the days the students would wake up and figure out if we all drove to campus, we could shut down the town. And that's true. Our relationship with our mass transit carrier was hot and cold, depending on the people. But by and large, we spend a lot of time, energy, and effort in keeping that piece working. And then within the 11,000 spaces that we had, trying to figure out the proportional need for students, for staff, and for faculty. And even within each of those categories, there were categories of student, categories of people that required special attentions. The professor emeritus had just got the Nobel Prize. Guess what? He got a good parking space. The head of the staff union, by and large, was taken care of. And what I tried to do was to balance all the squabbling to make certain that everybody came to campus that day and had a good day of parking. And the first impression you get of campus and the last impression you get of campus is the parking system.
I want to ask two questions of this, but I'll start with the other one. If you just look at the numbers that you just gave me, it almost looks like transportation was a far more complex and more demanding job than just the day-to-day parking on campus.
Yeah, well, the transportation when I was at Pitt, we ran the transportation. If you talk to my good buddies over in Texas A&M, they ran the transportation system. We opted at University of Texas to use the local mass carrier and let them run that, and we argued back and forth in terms of the revenue that we would pay them by passenger, by we could never get it to swipes with a credit card or with an ID card that would tell me how many people were really running. But it was the big challenge that we had was trying to figure out the financial package to keep the transportation system in place.
So it's nice to hear, like in parking, transportation is a big challenge in keeping up with the money too. So I guess everybody has the same problems that we always. So then let's move to the students. I can't even imagine, because that's something I never had to do. I can't even imagine dealing with that many students on campus every day and dealing with all the rules it takes to make them follow the rules, get their cars to campus or ride the bus. And how do you deal with them?
Well, the resident students had an opportunity to have a parking permit that allowed them to warehouse their car, if you will, Monday through Friday in a parking garage. Now, that was costly, but if that's what you wanted, then you paid to get that option. Otherwise, you parked in a student lot that was on the other side of a major highway, and a lot that was far away from campus, and you took a bus from there to the main part of campus. The other pieces of that was with the students. We had an intercampus loop that ran kind of from this point to that point. And what would take maybe a 7-minute walk across campus ended up being a 12-minute bus ride. But the numbers that took that 12-minute bus ride as opposed to the 7-minute walk were phenomenal. So we found ourselves having to put a lot of buses to satisfy a need that I always thought should have been not there. Tell people to walk now. When it's 114 in Austin, Texas, or when it's pouring down rain, that was very nice Benny to have. But the students could move around campus pretty easily with the bus system. Parking their cars was another challenge.
So with the technology, Parking has its own run through of technology that we all kind of deal with, but I always kind of believe that campus parking had to have its own new level of technology, of ways to keep up with all the movement of people and especially the movement of permits in and out when you've got kids constantly coming and going, staff constantly coming and going. What did you have with that really helped you do the job or didn't help you do the job?
Well, when I first got there, we were writing paper tickets, and this is in year 2000.
Right.
And we had some cardinal readers that could do tickets and everything like that. But the police department was in charge of parking, and the writers wouldn't work because of all the electronics in the police department. Okay, once we solved that problem by making certain that they weren't running that, we then had the opportunity to develop ways for the students to use the transportation. And we also had to figure out our football stadium held 86,000 when I got there. When I left, it was 105,000. 7 days a year, 6 days a year, depending on the schedule, we would park 120,000 cars on campus. For the biggest concern I had, we hadn't yet brought it all online. It's all online now, where you use the technology to get your parking space. But I'd have people in parking lots at midnight with several $1,000s, and that was always a very big concern of mine. That the cash was, how do you account for the cash? And we did a reasonably good job of it, but I was very happy when we went to a pay online, credit card only, and got the cash off the line.
So you were able to do that within how many seasons did it take you to kind of move through that whole transition?
Well, we started from in 2000, September 2000, when I got to the University of Texas. My boss told me, he says, Bobby, in Texas, we play big time football. We have 86,000 people here for a game. I said, Joe, when I was in college in 1965, we averaged 89,000 a big game. And if we'd have gotten less than that, we'd have fired Woody Hayes. So, and the first game, I towed the quarterback's car.
Good.
Because he was parked where he was supposed to be. And I called my boss and I said, the guy's name was Applewhite. And I said, hey, Joe, just wanted you to know.
Joe Applewhite's car.
We got a better one.
Oh, good.
But I've towed a car by a guy by the name of Applegate or something like that. I don't know who he is. And Joe just blew up. I said, we just relocated him. Later on, the humorous things is Colt McCoy, a very famous Texas football player. And he, when he was drafted, he proposed to his fiancée on the 50-yard line at the stadium. While he was doing that, we were booting his car because he had some outstanding tickets.
Just the normal life on a big college campus, right?
Well, I ran, when I first got there, I ran all the athletics players that were on scholarship to see if they had tickets, because there had been a scandal at UCLA a few years before, and this would have been in the late 90s, that the athletes weren't paying their tickets and they were just getting away with it. So I wanted to make certain that the athletes at University of Texas had the opportunity to participate fully in parking. So I ran that, and then I sent a note over to the coaches and said, hey, here's all the guys who got tickets that are outstanding.
So you may not have enough people to play football next week.
So this was in November, December when I sent that, and we were going to play a bowl game in San Diego. And two of the defensive backs came in and they gave me their vouchers for their flight from Boston to San Diego that the athletic department had bought. And I said, no. We're not going to take the voucher and then have the starting quarterback or cornerbacks not show up in San Diego. So there was a guy, Chris Sims, would come over with his buddies, and Chris would write checks for the other players, because Chris ended up coming to practice the first day that he came to UT. He came in this chauffeured limousine, and that kind of said something. But there was all these little idiosyncrasies that went on when you had to deal with the student body.
Yeah, I've just never been able to imagine all the real challenges in managing a university, a big university campus parking, because there are just so many moving parts, and there's also so many big personalities.
Absolutely.
I don't even know how you deal with those. So what kind of challenges did you have? Because you have then the staff, the professors. You have to deal with them. They're going to park on campus. They're not on the bus, right? They weren't on the city bus. They all had their car there.
But they wanted the opportunity to have the opportunity for staff to ride on the bus. So how do you pay for staff and faculty to ride on the bus, but don't have them pay anything? My boss, Joe Powell, came to me and said, "Hey, Bobby, I need someone to take over the campus vending." Okay. As long as I can hire one person from that and then use the funds from that vending to pay for staff and faculty. So I hired one person to run the program. He did all the interaction with Pepsi and Coke and the candy companies. And we would use the money from that to defer the cost of staff and faculty on the buses. So when people bitched to me and said, staff and faculty ride free. No, they don't ride free. We're paying for that out of the vending side of the house. It's kind of unusual for parking to be in charge of vending, but
right.
That was just kind of the way that I saw a way forward to be able to avoid a potential problem. But you talk about involved. I mentioned earlier that every surface parking lot is a place for a building to go. And so I learned early on that we needed to be involved in the construction of buildings. So we had one person that was our construction coordinator, and she would schedule all the movements and closures of streets to do buildings,
right.
To delivery, to close to surface of parking lot. And that really helped us communicate with the campus then that, hey, lot X is going away in September, so you need to move. Here's your options for moving. And that today we're going to close down X street because of deliveries of materials for buildings. But that whole concept of trying to integrate the parking and the campus construction was an integral part of what we had to do.
Yeah, I knew a little bit about that, but I kind of forgotten about the challenges, because college campuses, especially during certain times in the last 20 years, really went through these growth spurts or changes. And, we had a lot of old dormitories on these campuses, so they were getting rid of those, using those to put new places. And I just can't even imagine what it was like while you've got an active campus going on in students and trying to keep up with everybody, get them into a place where they can park every day and then still manage traffic. So how much did you guys have to get involved in managing traffic?
Well, we got involved in the campus master plan. Myself and my assistants were deeply involved.
That really put you in a good position then, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were able to forecast that we were going to lose these lots and ended up building a parking garage to replace a surface lot. It cost $20,000 per parking space versus $5,000 a parking space or whatever the numbers were back then. So it ended up being a very challenging thing to do, to keep track of, because everybody's going out to the donors saying, hey, I need a new building. I need a new building. And a lot of the donors are more than happy to come in, and we build a lot of buildings.
Put their name on it, right?
Yes. Yes. So the whole construction piece and the whole improvement of campus was a very, very significant part. Event parking was another. I mentioned it briefly before.
Mm-hmm.
Event parking caused a lot of anxieties. The thing I was happy about that at University of Texas we didn't have, but at University of Pittsburgh we did have, was a Thursday night football game on national television. Staff and faculty are there until 5 o'clock. No, not faculty, but staff's there until 5 o'clock in the lots that they use beside the stadium. So it was a balance of trying to figure out how to close down those lots at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, tell you that you got to be out of there by 3 o'clock. Then where do I go? Then I got to figure out where you go. And then be able to accommodate the people that want to come in. RVs are another problem. Wasn't a real problem at Pitt, but it was a real problem at Texas. These were high donors to the athletic department.
Sure.
High donors to the athletic department. High donors to the athletic department. And they had been parking their RV wherever they wanted to for many, many years. So here comes Harkins with a new deal and a new plan for them.
Right.
Found out who's kind of the head honcho of the individual network of the parking RVs, because they had a lottery system that they drew from parking spaces. So we ended up working it out to where they would come in at Thursday at 3:45. They could come on campus and they would park here. Then I had to put in electrical power. The thing I didn't have to put in is sewage disposal.
Right.
Then they'd hire a band, and the band would make too much noise for the neighborhood, and the neighborhood would bitch. So events were really a highlight.
There was a time, so I'll tell my story here. There was a time early when I was working at Central Parking System in Nashville that we took over parking for Vanderbilt football games. Right. So now I'm a young parking manager, and I have Vanderbilt, and I have plenty of staff, but I want to be involved because I want to learn what we have to do. So I would go down there before a game at like 9 o'clock in the morning to help everybody get set up. Right. And we had unfortunately at Vanderbilt, we had a lot of just surface lots. They weren't surface lots at all. They were really just fields with grass and trees and parks and stuff on campus. But during football, Saturdays, then they were full of cars.
Tailgate.
Yes. So Alabama. Now I've already done 5 or 6 football games, so I kind of know the drill. I go down there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, the whole state of Alabama showed up in RVs. And since we didn't have anybody there to park them, they just kind of parked themselves.
Yes.
So they were all over the place. Well, now because they had parked all different ways, they had crept into all the surface lots that I needed for cars. So I'm at 9 o'clock in the morning going, holy crap, what am I going to do? So I'm knocking on doors, waking them up to get them to move their cars. I knocked on every door of every RV there to each one at a time, line them up and get them, because I had to get them off the field for the cars because I was going to run out of room. So that was one of my only great experiences in parking at the university, but I will never forget it. And you guys had to do it every day.
Well, we would end up coming in, and I had a pregame tour, depending on the time of the game, but usually it was either 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock game or 2:30 game or 7 o'clock at night. But we would always shut the campus down at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And we would then begin to tow and move some of the athletes over to this location here, try not to take people away from where the campus was. But we started at 5 o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock in the morning. Well, I guess I thought it was rough for me to get down there at 9 o'clock, but up until that game,
But
9
once you
o'clock
got
it worked
the
fine.
campus, once you got the campus used to it, it was
Yeah.
just the stray person that wandered in that,
Right.
as you said, I wanted to park here.
Right. Yep. You have those. So then on football days or just sporting event days, what do you do with faculty then? Do they have their own special arrangements, or do they think they have their own special arrangements?
I made special arrangements. If you
Okay.
had a permit, because the argument was from the academics, you're preventing me from doing my academic job for this damn athletic department. And all they do is gross money and
Right.
blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So what we did is said, if you have a permit, you can come and park at your normal place. And
So did you have to hold space for them? Really?
I had space.
You had space
Yeah.
up to a point.
Yeah. Eventually we knew that these three professors, the numbers are small. They would tell you the numbers are great of the Saturday. It was amazing the number of professors that came in on Saturday wearing burnt orange. And they tended to come in about an hour and a half or 2 hours before kickoff,
Mm-hmm.
and tended to leave right afterwards.
Right.
So
they may not have
the
been at
numbers
their
were
office.
small, and if you accommodated them, I viewed my job as the director of parking and transportation is to keep problems away from the president's office, because people will drop a dime on you in a heartbeat. They will write a letter to the president, and then you spend time spending answering, et cetera. So how do we solve the problems at our level as opposed to it being 2 levels above me? And we got pretty good at that, where there were very few complaints that went above that, because the people were customer oriented.
Right.
Even if you're wrong, okay, how can we make it right? And, if somebody comes in and parks in their normal spot during the daytime and for a special event and didn't know that it was supposed to, but they can only do that once. They can only not know once. And then it was kind of, you're playing the game with the system.
Yeah, we understand your game now. So where did this, as I listen to the story, I realize now the staff that you had to run parking every day really have to be a pretty special bunch of people. This is a tough place. So where did you get most of that staff that ran your day-to-day parking operation and your managers of that staff? Where did you get those people? Were they local?
A lot of them were students that we hired that grew up being a student and came to work for parking and transportation after. Matter of fact, the director right now is a young lady that was a student that came to work for us as a student, got her master's degree, got her PhD at Texas State University, and then now is the director of parking and transportation for the University of Texas.
Oh, what about the day-to-day employees?
The day-to-day employees,
mainly students.
The one you felt the most for were the parking enforcement people that had to take the blast.
The absolute thankless job, right?
Yeah. And when I first got there, we weren't booting cars, and shortly after we got there, we started booting cars. And there was several times that until once again the word gets out, where somebody would pry the boot off of the car and take off. Well, they didn't realize that we had their license number and we had to make and model the vehicle.
Right.
And you had the police go knock on the door, say, "Excuse me, theft of material, blah, 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 blah." Mm-hmm. But it was, you just try to tell the people in the field, don't argue with them. Tell them to come to me and let me be the one, or let one of my assistants become the people to do that. We put in a ticket system where I had one person that reviewed all tickets, and if it didn't make sense, she could say, it goes away. If it made sense and you're still unhappy, there was an appeals committee that you could appeal to. And then finally it would come to me for resolution. And by then, when this is right at the time when technology was beginning to help us, a person come to the door, come to the cashier, I'm very unhappy. I got a ticket. I didn't do this. And you flip around the computer screen and say, is this your vehicle parked illegally, or, using two spaces? Yeah, I guess it's, and then they'd really pay off the ticket.
So then you saw that as technology moved forward, that had to really take a lot of pressure off of you guys dealing with the people that didn't like their tickets.
That and license plate recognition. So
license plate, boy, that has come such a big circle here.
We'd put in a boot list and you drive down the road and boom, boom, boom. First months it was really successful, and then the students figured out what I was doing and stayed away a little bit more.
Right. That the license plate recognition thing has been such a change in parking, and I hadn't thought about how it really can change the way things happen on campus. But that being able to drive down the street and use the license plate to say, "Oh yeah, there's a car that's a problem for us,"
or a parking garage.
Yeah.
So someone would say, "Well, I got a ticket. I've got outstanding tickets. I'll park
garage.
in the garage where I just have a daily ticket, and I pay my daily fee, and they'll never catch me. We'll run the license plate recognition vehicle through the garage. Bang, bang, bang. Boot them.
Here you guys are hiding in our garages."
Yeah, and then the people figure that out. Okay, that won't work. You're always playing one step, trying to stay one step ahead of the greatest minds that we have in this country.
So looking back then on your time at both campuses that you managed parking, looking back on that time, what are some of the highlights that you really remember and that you think really contributed to your ability to learn this business and move forward in it?
I think at Pitt, it was lighting. We got a student fee to put in lighting around the main streets and in the parking lots. And it was a security issue that really helped and really was impactful on the students. At UT, I'd almost say the same thing. It had to do with lot security and physical presence of people in the parking lots that helped that system.
I think I've always, having now 4 granddaughters on college campuses or over the last 5 or 6 years, I've always thought about the security of having a bunch of young ladies running around campuses at all times of the day or night. And they all look at me and say, "We don't know what you're talking about." They feel perfectly safe on the big campuses that they were at because there was so much emphasis put on what you were just talking about.
But I would tell you that, as I mentioned, the last several years, I was the Associate Vice President of Campus Safety and Security. Had parking, had police, had
Right.
fire, had environmental health and safety, and had the campus security office. Sunday night, dance is practicing at the dance, and young lady finishes that. Rather than walking a half block this way and catching a bus that will take her around campus to her residence all over here, she decides to walk down the creek. And there's a pathway there. I have video of an individual following her, and she gets brutally murdered, raped, and then thrown over in the side of the trail. I spent a year looking at campus safety and security. I worried about buildings. I got
Right.
architectures that students that are working till 4 o'clock in the morning in buildings. I got in little cubicles by themselves. I got research assistants working. So we put in a policy that said that as of this time at night, the doors are going to close on all the buildings on campus, except for one door that would be the door that you could access with your student ID. So
Right.
we at least knew that who was in the buildings, who wasn't in the buildings. We did a lot of scrubbing of the vegetation and looking at the vegetation around doorways that could hide somebody. We improved the lighting all over campus. We improved I had people and try to teach people that if you're in a building and you don't feel secure, then call 911. But if you can't get a signal out of the building because of the leads
Right.
categories,
Right.
had the building so tight, you had to put in another network in the building to get the signals out. We did a whole bunch of things like that for a year, trying to figure out how to be able to tell the president, I guarantee you, as best I can, we've covered all the bases. Forward to May the following year, 2:00 in the afternoon, student activity building on campus is here. A student came walking out, pulled a knife, stabbed 3 people and killed one at 2:00 in the afternoon. So the president told me, he said, well, Bobby, all that work you did on campus safety and security at night, I guess was not worth it, or was wasted or something like that.
Oh, gosh.
And
For a random thing like that,
you don't know, but it's part of the whole. When you put together 50,000 students, we had numerous bomb incidents, bomb threats. We had one kid came on campus with an AK-47 and sprayed the campus, but he didn't shoot anybody. He ran up to the top of the library and took his own life.
right. Well,
It was always a challenge.
I think you have the opportunity to talk to somebody like Bob, and you hear all that goes into university parking. And I always knew it was a really big challenge, but I really never knew all of the detail. You never really learn that until you talk to somebody that has this kind of experience. But it is one of the major challenges in our business to be able to touch all the things that in Bob's career and his jobs he had to do to be able to get through a day every day. And I don't think there were many people, you know this far better than I do. I'm not sure there were very many people on campus that had to touch as many things as you had to do to get through every day.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. I managed a lot of hospitals, large hospitals, and the facilities director was the job there that I always thought was the toughest single job.
Mm-hmm.
But when you move to the university campus, it's just that your numbers go up so much. You know, I managed the second largest public hospital in the country many years ago, and that was Jackson Memorial in Miami. And we had a 20,000 population daytime campus. And the guy that was a director there was a wonderful guy who threatened me every day by the name of Ali Bonnard. And I always thought that's the guy where I really learned how hard that job was. And I always understood how hard of a job it was. But we had a 20,000 population campus, not the numbers that you were dealing with every day. And the broad scope of all the different types of people that were there every day. That's an amazing story to hear what really happens on a college campus every day. Any other thing you'd like to tell us that that was interesting during your career?
Well, it was fun, and the fun part of being the director of parking and transportation was, in fact, dealing with all of the various issues and being involved in so much of the campus. The campuses that don't have their parking director involved in construction and events planning and flow of movement on campus are places that are missing a golden opportunity to pull in a colleague and to help people understand the complexity of parking.
I'm sure there are college campuses out there. Just as you said that, I realize this. I'm sure there are colleges out there that are large, even small, that do not allow the person that's running parking and touching all of those pieces every day, do not give them a seat at the table when it comes to planning new buildings, new traffic flow, how to deal with some of the new technologies that's coming along, and they don't get that level of support from the parking people. I think because of who they think we are. But if they did, it would go a long way to help have a better campus every day.
And one more thing I would add is it's the responsibility of parking to make things work.
Right.
No matter how outrageous it is, or we're going to take your main garage and blow it up or something like that, you got to figure out a way to make it happen, because the president is counting on you to make certain that the campus doesn't get interrupted when it's being interrupted. It should be invisible as best you can, and you've warned as many people that, hey, this is happening. But the parking side of the house doesn't need to sit in the corner and say, poor pitiful me. They need to be aggressive in their willingness to communicate to the campus.
Right. So how does a parking on a campus that has not really been able to, or been invited to the table, or respected as much as they should, what kind of advice would you have for being able to get that extra step and get to the place where you can really have an impact on
I think initially it's focusing on two aspects. One, the police department. I'm not a believer that parking needs to be under the police department. Matter of fact,
I'm strongly against that. Right.
I was director of parking and transportation and got a call from my boss to come up and talk to her. And she said, Bobby, I got this great idea. I'm going to move parking under the police department. I said, Pat, you do that, I quit.
Right. Yeah.
She said, what do you mean? I said, parking is solving problems. And there's a lot of gray matter that goes on in terms of best decision, bad decision, but you got it done. The police department's yes or no, black and white, and the ability to tell the campus no.
Right.
But parking is the flexible one to make things happen. So the police department's important to get their support, particularly for your guys and gals that are working at nighttime doing boots and stuff like that.
Right.
The police department needs to be on your call network, and then your radio system needs to interface with them. The other one is the physical plant people. They're the ones that know the master planning in terms of where things are going and how they're going.
Right.
And working with them to facilitate that becomes the easiest way to impress the campus with what you can do.
That's a very interesting way to put it. I've always known, only because very early in my parking career, I began to see the difference between the campuses that fell under the police department and the ones that had broken away and were out there managing on their own. And it was pretty easy, even though I didn't know campus parking very well, it was pretty easy for me to very quickly see the difference between those two campuses. And it was pretty obvious. So I think, are there any other things you'd like to share with us before we wrap it up here?
No, it's just working in the parking industry and on a campus is a great job. I would just tell people to enjoy the chance to communicate with students, make the students your friend, make staff and faculty your friend, gain your support, spend your time cultivating friends, because when something gets screwed up, you need somebody, rather than running to the president, that dean, to call you and say, hey, Bobby, this is not right. Can you fix it? Yeah, and your job is to fix it and make it right. And I just think that building that friendship and the colleagues that on campus becomes a very, very important thing to do.
Not everybody has somebody like Bob Harkins on your campus to manage all the hard stuff and to always know that he's there to accept responsibility and fix the problems. Unfortunately, not every campus, I'm sure, has that strong of a personality. But that was good. I've enjoyed this, and I hope everyone has learned a lot out there. I think this is just such a challenge. It's one of the biggest management jobs in our industry that we have. I don't even know of one that would really come close to the challenges of managing a college campus. And to hear Bob walk through the steps that are involved in dealing with events and faculty and staff and students, it was really a
Could I add
yes,
one thing?
yes,
We
please.
didn't talk about equipment.
Right, only briefly, right.
In terms of gates and
Right.
and software, et cetera. You only got enough money to do it one time. You know, the technology people that are building will bring you in a new system and say you can replace all your gates for $1 million. You can do this. You don't have that money. So you've got to do an investigation. If you need equipment, talk to your fellow colleagues at colleges and universities. Talk to the experts. Pick and choose wisely, and make certain that the systems interface with each other. I had a situation where my parking gates in lots, in surface lots, wouldn't talk to the parking in the garages. And it just was totally, it took me several years to unscrew that.
Right.
But parking technology comes fast and is moving very fast. And it's something that you can't afford to mess up.
Are you, I know you stay in touch with the people that are still there. Are you hearing anything from them yet about some of the new things that are coming along? Are they starting to get to an understanding of some of the changes that are going to happen?
Yeah, and a lot of it's been in our special event parking.
Yeah, especially in special events, right?
And the idea that you're able to reserve a space from home when you're coming to a football game or a basketball game or a baseball game. We've used T2 for many years, and they have been good to us.
Right.
We went through a period where we worried about a corporation taking over all of our parking and paying the university for the parking, much like Ohio State did. We were able to have enough cash on hand to not need to go that direction. Even during COVID, Bobby Stone, who replaced me, was able to work his way through the debt service payments on garages. You know, we had 7 garages that we were paying debt service on. So when the campus shuts down, you know, you've got the permit money, and then the permit people start clamoring for a refund because they're not using the system. Once again, just something else you got to balance out to make it come out right.
Good. Okay, so I think we come to an end, at least on this one. We always reserve these for part 2 and 3 because we learn so much from them, and we get comments about them. So I think this is a part 1 of many parts. I think listening to the complexity, you know, if you're in the parking business, you have to enjoy complexity. It's just part of our life.
That's right.
And to listen to the complexity of what this guy has been involved in through his career and understanding the challenges of university parking is just terribly interesting to me. So I think we'll reserve this as number 1 before 2 and 3 come along.
Sounds good, Clyde.
You got
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad you were able to do this with us.
Thank you.
I hope you found it interesting.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining our conversation between Clyde Wilson and Bob Harkins today. We discussed some challenging topics, but we hope that you gained some valuable insight that you can take with you into your role in the parking industry. See you next time. In this episode of the Our Parking Industry podcast, we are going to introduce ourselves, the Parking Network, now TPN Consulting, and then we will discuss a little bit of the history, Clyde's start to the parking industry in 1979, all the way through current day and what TPN has in store for the future for our company. And then we will take it on the rest of the season and go out and explore the parking network in its entirety.